50 tips and tricks to customize every aspect of your new OnePlus 6. OnePlus 6 runs the latest version of Android with the smooth and stable Oxygen OS overlay. Overall, it has some really fine software tips, tricks, and features that you need to know. So let's dive in and master the OnePlus 6 and enhance your ownership of this fantastic smartphone. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about is the gestures you can apply on a lock screen. So let me go to the settings really quick. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. When you go to the settings, just scroll down and in the customization block over here, go into gestures and go all the way down and you'll see these 5 different gestures. Draw O, V, S, M, W. So let me show you what this one does and you'll get the idea for the rest of them as I show you this one. So let's tap on this guy and let's pick calculator as my application to launch when I draw the O gesture in the lock screen. So if I go to the lock screen right now, turn off the phone, and if I just draw the word O, it's going to, oops, I just missed that. If I just draw it, it's going to launch the calculator right away. Okay, so you can have 5 of these gestures, and these are the different letters you can use. The V, S, M, and W, and you can choose any app to launch by drawing these gestures. And of course, you can also have these shortcuts to be performed, such as the camera, front camera, record a video, open flashlight, or open shelf. So this is not bad at all. Okay, so those are the gestures, and that is in fact my favorite feature. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the notch. So one of the most standout features of this phone is the notch. It looks almost like the iPhone, and what you can do with this notch is you can actually disable it to some extent. And by disabling, I mean you can mask it using a software bar, which is in black color, that's going to match the notch. So if you go down a little bit over here, tap on display. Over here, you'll see notch display. You tap on this guy, and then you tap on hide the notch area, and boom, you get a black bar that covers it vertically over here, horizontally, and then it looks as if there is no notch. And of course, even as you do this, you can still see the clock and the other little icons over here. So that's a nice touch because you're not losing the real estate. All right. So let's go back out. Let's go back to the notch display and let's move on to the next tactic. Now going back into the main settings, this area is very important. It is all about customization. So you have the alert slider, which is the physical button over here that you can use to change your phone from vibrate to silent to ring. Okay, so what you can do is, let's say that you use the slider to go to silent mode. What you can do is you can pick what happens when you're in that mode. So if I tap on this one, so it's saying over here that alarms will always ring even when you are in silent mode. But you can, in fact, mute the media volume. But if you undo this, it's going to mute everything else but the alarms and the media. But if you enable this, media will be muted as well, such as when you're watching a YouTube video. So let's go back. You can do the same thing with vibration, different little settings, and same thing with the ring over here. Also vibrate for calls. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 over here is buttons, another very, very interesting option in the OnePlus 5. So basically, if you tap on it, you get to play with the 3 buttons at the bottom here. And there's so much you can do here. The first thing I'm going to show you guys has to do with navigation bar and gestures. So not the buttons, but the actual bar at the bottom. So tap on the navigation bar, and you can have a fixed bar, or if you want a full screen seamless view, you can hide the navigation bar. Now what you can do is you can tap on this button, and the bar just disappears, all right? So if you want to bring it back, you just go like that, and it's right there. Again, if you want to get rid of it, it'll go down by itself, but for the first time, you would have to tap this for it to stay or disappear. If I tap it again, it disappears. If I pull it up again and tap it, it stays, all right? So you can play with that way. You can always send it down also. And finally, over here, you have the navigation gestures. So if you tap this guy, what you can do is you have a bunch of gestures. One of them is this guy here. So this is the gesture that takes you to the home screen. Okay, let's go back into the settings. This is the gesture. If you pause over here, it starts the multitasking pane, so you can pick any app that you want. And then the other gestures you have over here, oops, wrong menu, to the buttons, navigation bar. Other gestures that you have are the back gesture that allows you to go back, or you have the landscape gesture that also gives you this option right over here. So you can come and take a look at these if you want to. Now let's go back out and let's actually go to fixed navigation bar. Let's go back out. When you have the fixed navigation bar enabled, all these options are also enabled. This one is going to swap the buttons for you. So the recent goes over here. I mean, the back goes over here. The recent key goes over here. That's up to you which one you want where. This one over here, press power button twice for camera, is something standard now on all these Android smartphones. You double tap the power button and it's going to bring out the actual camera so you can take a quick shot on the go. Now here's where things actually get very interesting. So you have the home button, which is the middle one. You've got the recents button, which is the square one, and you've got the back button, which is this triangle over here. You can customize these buttons individually. They all have a basic function. So if I tap this, it just goes home. If I tap and hold, it launches the assistant. But you can actually program extra gestures into it. So let me go back here, buttons. Let's just use the home button as an example. So long press action. Normally it is set to launch Google Assistant, but you can do all these other things as well, including no action. Let's do this one, double tap action. So if I double tap it, I want one of these things to happen. Let's go to shelf when we double tap. Okay, so if I double tap right now, boom, it goes right to the shelf. And shelf is also an option that resides on the home screen. If you swipe over, it's a bunch of widgets you can use to give you some meaningful information that can also be customized by tapping the plus and adding more widgets to it. Okay, so double tap can always take you to the shelf if you so desire. That's one of the nice features in this phone. And again, you can do the same thing for recents button, and you can do the same thing for back button. So these buttons suddenly become very, very useful. All right, so let's keep moving on to the next tips. We did talk about the gestures, but there's some other menus options here in this menu that I like. One of them is flip to mute. So if somebody calls you and the phone is ringing, what you can do is you can grab the phone, just flip it over, and it's going to mute that call. This one here is a 3-finger screenshot. So if you swipe 3 fingers on the screen, it's going to take a screenshot. Okay, that's also very fantastic, very convenient. And of course, double tap to wake, which is my favorite, which is something that works at the lock screen level. So if I go to the lock screen, it's turned off, double tap, it wakes up the phone. All right, and you also have a music control that allows you to, again, this happens on the lock screen. You can draw the pause, and it's going to pause the music that plays, or you can draw the pause again, and you have to use 2 fingers like this, and that's going to pause or play music. So pause, play, okay? And if you do this or this, it's going to go in the previous track or the next track. Absolutely fantastic. And we did talk about this already. Now let's go back out over here, and let's take a look at the status bar. Status bar pertains to the top area here. So first and foremost, you can change the battery style. You tap on this, you have all these different battery styles: battery bar, battery circle, battery hidden. So that's great. So if I tap this, you have a circle. If I tap it again, it's gone, okay? But I do like to have it there, so it's right there. You can also have this thing enabled, display network speed. So when you pull down the notifications panel, it actually shows you the current network speed that is being used for download or upload. All right, so that's also a nice stat to have if you're into that kind of thing. And over here you have the icon manager that manages all the icons on the top here. So if you don't want the Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth icon to show up here, if they're just taking space, you can tap this, and they are in fact disabled. Okay, so it's a nice option to have to be able to customize this area. And of course, you have all these options as you can see. All right, I like to keep as many enabled as possible for maximum information. So let's go back out here. That was the status bar. And then finally you have the font over here. The font's very simple. You can switch between Roboto or the OnePlus Slate, which is what I prefer. Now this one is a little bit different, as you can see. And I like the way it changes very quickly. Okay, it doesn't have to restart the phone. It just goes boom, boom. The next thing I want to talk about is the display over here. Let's go into it. And of course, the ambient display is very important. It gives you meaningful information on your phone while the phone is shut. Now, the only way to actually activate the ambient display is to lift the phone up. So if the phone is just sitting here and turned on, if I lift the phone up, I get some nice information just like that. Okay, so it disappears very quickly, which sucks. But you can glance at it. You pick up the phone, you can take a quick glance. It'll show you the battery, time, date, notifications, if any, and all that good stuff. Let's double tap to go back inside. And you can also pick the clock style for the always on display, for the ambient display. I'm sorry, not the always on display, it's the ambient display. So you can pick this option. All right, doesn't look very bad. This is the one I already had over here. You have this one with the analog clock, which looks a little more fancy. And you have this option over here, okay? And you can pick the one that you like. You can click save, and that's what you see on the lock screen. So that's the ambient display. And you can also have a quick signature. So this is going to show up on your ambient display. You can have anything you want, a word or a phrase. And one more thing, if your screen is turned off and you get a notification, a message, or an email, it is going to wake up the display temporarily, briefly, and show you that notification, and it's going to then turn off again. All right, so that was the ambient display in the display. The next thing is the theme over here. You can switch between two modes. You can go to default, which is light, or you can go to dark. Dark is going to give you a black background with white fonts, which looks pretty nice. And on top of that, you can go to the accent color and change the accent. These are the accents. The system over here is an accent. These are accents. And of course, these purple ones here are also accents. So what I can do is I can tap this. I can tap on orange, click OK. And as you can see, those accents are going to change to orange. Okay. Now I prefer the light theme, so let's go back to that. And even with that, you can pick different accent colors by tapping this button again. All right, so you have all these different color options. And of course, over here you have the pulse notification light. If you get a message you want to get notified with a light, make sure this one is enabled. And when you do enable it, you can also change the color of those LED notifications on the top. So if you tap this, the default notification is always green, but you can tap this and pick one of these colors. The battery full is always green. Battery charging, you can have something like yellow maybe. Okay. Battery low is red. And then you can also do per app notification. So if I tap on this one, I can pick which app I want to be notified by. So if I don't want any notification LEDs to show up when I get a, let's see, an email, I can just disable that. And it's now going downstairs. If I want to enable it, boom, goes right back up. Okay, so nice customization tactics again. And finally, back in the settings, if you scroll down again, under display over here, you have sound and vibration. You tap on this guy, and then under earphones, you have the audio tuner that you can use to tune your audio if you're into that kind of thing. What you do have to do is you have to plug in a headphone into the headphone jack over here, which is a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And then when you do that, all these menus get enabled and you can start to play with these settings. Okay, so I quickly did plug the headphone jack in here. You can enable this option. You have all these options. You can tap on this. You have these enhancements you can add onto it and see how it feels. And of course, you can use the presets for the equalizer, or you can do it manually over here by tweaking these settings if you're into that kind of thing. Okay, so again, this can be disabled even when the headphone is plugged into the jack, or you can just enable it. Fantastic. And of course, under the earphone mode, you have these options as well. You can pause the video, take a look at these. Nothing fancy, but just an option that you do have. All right, and that was the final tip I wanted to talk about for the OnePlus 6.